In today's video, we are counting down the top 10 oldest murderers in the United States, ranked strictly by their age at the time the crime was committed. The ranking starts with individuals in their 70s and moves upward to those in their 80s and 90s. Each case on this list shocked the public, not only because of the crime itself, but because of the age of the person responsible. Statistically, violent crimes are far less common among elderly individuals, which makes these cases stand out even more. For this ranking, the structure is equal and balanced. Each case is explored in detail so you can understand the background, the events, the investigation, and the legal outcome. The goal is to present the facts clearly and responsibly without sensationalism while still giving you a powerful and engaging breakdown. Let's begin the countdown. 10. Amy Bosley. Age 70 at number 10 on our list is Amy Bosley, who was 70 years old at the time of the fatal incident that brought national attention to her case. The crime took place in West Virginia and involved her husband. According to investigators, what began as a domestic dispute escalated into a deadly confrontation inside their home. When authorities arrived, they found evidence of a violent altercation. Prosecutors later argued that the situation had been building over time, with tension and conflict inside the marriage playing a major role. The defense, however, presented a different version of events, suggesting fear and emotional distress were factors in the escalation. The case became widely discussed because violent crimes involving individuals in their 70s are statistically uncommon. Many people assume that by the age of 70, individuals are far removed from situations that could lead to such outcomes. Yet this case demonstrated that age does not automatically eliminate the possibility of extreme conflict. During the trial proceedings, the court examined witness testimony, forensic evidence, and the history of the relationship. Mental and emotional state were also debated heavily in court. In the end, the legal system moved forward based on the evidence presented, and the case became one of the rare examples of a 70-year-old being held accountable in a murder case. Amy Bosley's case stands as a reminder that domestic disputes, when unresolved, can turn tragic regardless of age. It opened conversations about conflict resolution, mental health, and the warning signs that sometimes go unnoticed within households. 9. Albert Flick, age 76. At number 9 is Albert Flick, who was 76 years old when he committed a fatal attack in Maine in 2018. Flick had a documented criminal history prior to this case, which made the incident even more alarming to the public. The crime occurred in broad daylight, shocking members of the local community. Law enforcement officers quickly responded and took Flick into custody. What disturbed many observers was the fact that Flick had previous violent convictions, and yet he was free at such an advanced age. The prosecution argued that the attack was deliberate and targeted, presenting evidence that showed a pattern of violent behavior spanning decades. The defense acknowledged his age and health concerns, but ultimately the court focused on the severity of the act and the danger it posed. This case sparked intense debate about parole decisions and how the justice system evaluates long-term risk. Many questioned whether earlier warning signs had been overlooked, and also led to public discussions about how age factors into sentencing decisions. Despite being in his mid-70s, Flick was convicted and sentenced accordingly. The court made it clear that prior criminal history and demonstrated risk outweighed considerations about advanced age. Albert Flick's case remains one of the most discussed examples of violent crime committed by someone in their mid-70s, reinforcing the principle that accountability does not disappear with age. 8. William Wallace, age 81. At number 8 is William Wallace, who was 81 years old at the time of a fatal shooting in Florida. The incident reportedly stemmed from a long-standing dispute involving neighbors. What had once been minor disagreements gradually turned into a serious conflict. Authorities stated that tensions had been building for months. On the day of the incident, a confrontation escalated beyond control. Law enforcement arrived shortly after emergency calls were placed, and Wallace was taken into custody without resistance. Community members expressed disbelief that someone in their 80s could become involved in such a tragic event. During the trial, prosecutors focused on evidence that suggested the act was intentional rather than accidental. The defense highlighted Wallace's age, health conditions, and the emotional stress surrounding the dispute. The court ultimately weighed the facts presented by both sides and delivered its verdict based on the evidence. The case prompted broader conversations about firearm access among elderly individuals and how unresolved disputes can spiral out of control. William Wallace's case, stands as a sobering example of how prolonged tension, if not resolved, can lead to devastating consequences, even in the later decades of life. 7. Charles Uexter. Age 82. Coming in at number 7 is Charles Uexter, who was 82 years old when he became involved in a domestic homicide case in California. According to court documents, the situation involved a deteriorating personal relationship that had been strained for some time. Investigators determined that the fatal confrontation occurred inside the home. Evidence collected at the scene played a central role during trial proceedings. Prosecutors described the act as intentional, while the defense raised concerns about mental decline and emotional instability. The advanced age of the accused became a central topic during the case. Experts testified about cognitive health, aging, and the possibility of impaired judgment. However, the court emphasized that age alone does not exempt someone from legal responsibility. The case drew public attention because individuals in their early 80s are rarely associated with violent criminal charges. It also highlighted the complex intersection between aging, mental health, and accountability. Charles Uexter's conviction reinforced a consistent legal principle. Regardless of age, actions carry consequences when supported by sufficient evidence in court. 6. Paul Loving, age 88. At number 6 is Paul Loving, who was 88 years old when he was charged in connection with a fatal shooting involving a family member. The incident stunned the local community, as Loving had lived quietly for decades prior to the event. Investigators reported that the conflict arose from a family dispute. On the day of the incident, an argument escalated rapidly, resulting in deadly consequences. Law enforcement officers responded swiftly and placed Loving under arrest. Because of his advanced age, questions were raised about competency to stand trial. Medical evaluations were conducted, and the court carefully reviewed expert testimony before allowing proceedings to continue. Prosecutors focused on establishing intent and responsibility. The defense emphasized health concerns and emotional strain. Ultimately, the case proceeded through the justice system, demonstrating that even individuals nearing 90 years old can face full legal scrutiny. Paul Loving's case remains one of the rare documented instances of someone in their late 80s being charged with murder in the United States. Robert Durst, age 78, convicted at 78. At number 5 is Robert Durst, who was 78 years old when he was convicted in 2021 for the murder of Susan Berman. A real estate heir with a long history of legal troubles, Durst's case spanned decades. The conviction followed years of investigation, media coverage, and renewed public interest sparked by documentary exposure. Prosecutors presented evidence tying Durst to the crime through witness statements and documented admissions. His advanced age at conviction drew attention, as many questioned whether justice would ever be served due to the lengthy legal timeline. Ultimately, the jury returned a guilty verdict. Durst's case illustrates how persistence in investigation can eventually lead to accountability, even if it takes decades. 4. Lois Reese, age 68, sentenced in her 70s. At number 4 is Lois Reese, often referred to by media as the killer grandma. Though 68 at the time of the crime, she entered her 70s during sentencing. Her case involved financial motives in a cross-country investigation. Authorities tracked her movements across multiple states before making an arrest. During trial proceedings, prosecutors detailed the sequence of events and the evidence collected. The case gained widespread attention because it contradicted common assumptions about elderly female offenders. Reese was ultimately convicted, reinforcing the idea that age and appearance do not prevent someone from facing serious criminal charges. 3. Anthony Todt Sr., age 89. At number 3 is Anthony Todt Sr., who was 89 years old when he faced murder charges stemming from a domestic case involving family members. The legal proceedings were complex, with competency evaluations playing a central role. Prosecutors focused on establishing responsibility, while the defense raised concerns about health and mental capacity. The case underscored how rare it is for someone approaching 90 to face such charges, yet the justice system proceeded carefully and deliberately. 2. James O'Keefe, age 91. At number 2 is James O'Keefe, who at 91 years old became one of the oldest individuals in the United States to be convicted of murder. The case involved a dispute that escalated fatally. Despite his age, prosecutors presented evidence that convinced the jury of his responsibility. The verdict demonstrated that accountability remains consistent under the law, regardless of how advanced someone's age may be. William Billy Cammermere, age 92, topping our list at number 1 is William Billy Cammermere, who was in his 90s when convicted in connection with multiple murders in Texas. His case involved elderly victims and took years to fully uncover. Investigators connected evidence across multiple incidents, ultimately building a strong case. His age at conviction made him one of the oldest serial offenders in modern U.S. history. The case shocked the nation and highlighted the importance of thorough investigation, especially when patterns begin to emerge over time. These 10 cases demonstrate that violent crime, while statistically rare among the elderly, is not impossible. Age does not erase accountability. The justice system continues to operate based on evidence, responsibility, and due process no matter how old the accused may be. If you found this ranking informative and powerful, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more detailed crime breakdowns and top 10 lists. See you in the next video.